Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome in to the 143. This is episode 179. We're coming at you live. Nick, how are we doing tonight?
Good. Got some big news on the NCAA front as of the past couple of weeks. We're here to dive into it.
Yeah, a little college sports, but mainly college football episode for you tonight. Start us off with the stat of the week, brought to you by our sponsor, Andrews Logistics. I thought this was interesting. Texas Tech is projected to spend $55 million on name, image, likeness stuff for their players this year.
Okay.
We're talking all sports, and this is supposed to be the largest amount of money a school spent on their players so far. So that doesn't necessarily mean they'll be good at everything, but
I was gonna say, don't know very many people who are itching to get down to Lubbock, but I guess they're gonna find a way.
I knew you wouldn't appreciate that as much, Nick, over here, coming from a diehard Baylor family, being a Baylor fan. But
Yeah.
that is just how the chips fall, Nick. They have a lot of money right now. They've got
It would seem so.
they do have Patty Mahomes as one of their benefactors, I'm sure, and a couple other rich oil men from Texas. We have a lot of those here, so doesn't really mean they're going to do anything. But I did think that was interesting because you wouldn't peg Tech as a school that would,
You figured it would be an SEC school for sure.
Yeah, but that's all sports. That's not just football. I'm sure football takes most of it though.
Player of the week is Reggie Bush, just because anytime players get paid. He did get played.
He did
in some form or fashion
by the NCAA.
His name always comes up when they talk about paying their players, just because of the things he did 20 years ago. Got his Heisman back, which was a big deal. People had been arguing for that for a while, and finally happened. So good for him.
We were all for that here.
And he ended his collegiate career with 3,169 rushing yards, 25 rushing touchdowns, with 1,301 receiving yards and 13 touchdowns. So needless to say, he was a dog in college, and obviously won a Heisman, lost it, and then, well, actually, if you think about it, somewhat of a two-time Heisman winner, because he won it, lost it, and then got it back. So good for him on that one.
Attaboy Reggie. Dude was definitely a dog back in the day, and love to see him on those Nissan Heisman House commercials. Let's get him in there now that he's got his Heisman, please. Actually, they got him in there. Let's keep him in there. And man, I'm ready to see some of those commercials again, because that means football's back. And like we said,
entertaining.
They are, and like we said last week, we're just ready for football. We got to the point where, we're out here, Nick. We just miss the games on Saturdays, Sundays, Mondays, Thursdays. So it's time to bring that back. We've got a few more months to build up the anticipation. Let's dive into it, though. A couple changes here in the college world. A lot has changed over the last 2 or 3 years with NIL becoming legalized, and just a couple weeks ago, a federal judge deemed it legal for schools to pay the players themselves, not just like car companies and other companies, but the schools themselves. And it goes back, I think, to like players that played in 2015. So players will be compensated.
It was like $2.8 billion or something like that of compensation. Which is pretty crazy, just all this money that they have, just spewing it out everywhere. Yep. But that's kind of been something in the works for the last couple of years, is figuring out. We've gotten to the point where the NCAA said, yes, we need to pay players, but now it's kind of in this land of figuring out how do we do that and how do we regulate it somehow, because that's also been a complaint that happened over the last couple of years.
I'm in the camp, and I think Nick is too, of like these players make, especially, we focus more on the college football part of it. These players make these schools so much money. A with their products on the field. I think it's only fair that they see some of that, the fruits of their labor, like a full ride scholarship's just not enough anymore because let's face it, most of these guys aren't using their college scholarships anyways. So
This is a
um,
billion-dollar industry.
yeah,
Um,
they make them
just
so much
talking
money.
about college football mainly. It's a billion-dollar industry, and before the players aren't seeing a dime. Well, think about, okay, obviously I understand the product on the field that you're seeing from Colorado is not the greatest to use as an example, but it's like their football program boosted a lot of the hype just around that school as a
Hmm.
whole.
Yeah,
And yeah, their football team stunk, but kind
Coach
of
Prime,
put
baby.
them on the map a little bit,
Yeah,
because
got
people
them nationally televised
see
games.
all that hype and they're like, dang, I kind of want to go there. When normally you wouldn't even give Colorado a second look. Now, like I said, yes, I understand their college football team was garbage. Okay. I'm making that very clear. I'm not trying to argue that they were good or anything like that, but it's
It's a
like
prime example.
those players somewhat contributed to admissions, and that in turn makes the school a ton of
Well,
money.
I don't remember the exact amount, but there was a report that like Colorado, Coach Prime coming to Colorado made the city of Boulder X amount of dollars. I
Yeah.
mean, they brought in revenue to the city with people coming in. You know, you've got the people, all the celebrities coming in to see these games
Oh,
now
yeah.
with Coach Prime. I mean,
Hmm.
and I think that is a great example. And I think it's only fair that you pay the players. So, you know, this was bound to happen at some point. The NCAA just dragged its feet for way too long. You know, so the paying the players thing has been going on. The fact that schools can pay them now, that was going to happen at some point. The next issue that really needs to be addressed though is this transfer portal thing. The fact that there are two windows in the spring and in the winter, I think, right as soon as the season's over, and then in the spring for players to transfer is ridiculous. You know, I think I like the money part of it, but I think there needs to be a contract that follows that money. You know, kind of like, I mean, they're trying to make it like the pros, and in order to make it like the pros, you know, they can't just leave their team whenever they want. There needs to be a contract in place to where these guys are committed to the school for, you know, a certain amount of time. And let's get rid of one of the transfer window portal windows and just have one. I think that's ridiculous that these guys have like two chances to leave in case something like makes them mad or they're not making the amount of money that they want. So I think that's the next issue that needs to be addressed.
Because over the last couple seasons, there's just been this huge abuse of the transfer portal where you'll see um, they'll use the transfer portal and then like a red shirt and then a medical red shirt and then the COVID year to where they're
Hmm.
playing. Prime example was what is that dude's name?
Cam something from Miami
Yeah, whatever his name was. Dude's a
didn't get
bum.
drafted.
Played in
Yeah,
the in uh was it like 8 or 9 years that he was in
8 or 9
college?
years finished with Miami. Yep.
But anyways, been kind of an abuse of power on that transfer portal deal where people are just jumping around from school to school to school. And the whole point of that transfer portal, at its core, what it was supposed to do was, if you were in a, say, D2 position, and you're a stud, and the D1 school looks at you and says, hey, you got the stuff to play for a D1 school. It's about, moving up and then I guess maybe transferring once if you're a really good quarterback, but you're not starting because the guy above you is insanely good, so you're never going to see the field. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. But the whole um, moving around from school to school to school, and then by the time your college career is over, you played for three different schools, that's kind of annoying. And then adding another transfer portal window is not going to help that whatsoever. It's just going to get worse.
Well, the whole point of college sports too is to develop these players to get ready for the pros. And now the fact that you're giving them money on top of, you know, if they get unhappy, you're gonna be unhappy. Like the whole point of it, it takes the power away from the coach and the coaches in the standpoint of like now you've got to like walk on eggshells around these players and give them kind of what they want because If you don't and they're a good player, like they're just going to leave and go somewhere else because you made them mad. And, that doesn't teach these 18, 19-year-old kids about kind of how life works in general. You can't just quit something because you're not having a good time with it in the moment. And so I think that takes that part away from it as well.
And it takes away from what college football was at it, really down to its core over literally since it started. Taken away from the coaching as well, because now you've almost completely taken out the aspect of building, recruiting, and developing players, because now you can just go get a sophomore in college who's already established himself, rather than taking a senior out of high school, developing him for 4 years, because just with this whole transfer portal process, and that kind of outsourced a guy like Nick Saban, because that's what he was so good at, was recruiting, and then developing and developing and developing these guys. Well, now you don't even have to do that, because you can just go out and buy the best player in college football, because they've got this transfer portal window going on right now. And then with the way that they're paying players, it just takes out that whole developmental aspect of it.
Yeah. Agreed. It's there. I think they are going to have to do something about that, and they'll do something about it soon. Even the coaches are saying, like, there's got to be more regulation. You can't leave all these choices up to kids coming out of high school who are just, seeing green, because they've never seen this much money before.
And obviously the NCAA knows that, because they've been tweaking it here and there, and unfortunately, it's just a trial and error process where you just got to run it a certain way and then keep going along with it, and then just figure it out. We'll see what they do next year. Who knows?
One last thing to hit on before we go is the other big change they've made to the college football playoff. Instead of the top 4 conference winners getting the seeds 1 through 4 in the first round bye, I think they're going to get an automatic bid to the top 5, the Power 5 conference winners, and then the schools will all still be seeded as the committee sees fit. So it's no longer an automatic seed 1 through 4. They will reseed all the schools based on how good they actually are, which, you kind of need that. You can't have Boise State coming in getting a bye week, just to get trounced by Penn State or whatever. Like, the top 4, well, I guess it's the 12 teams need to be ranked 1 through 12 and how good they are. Obviously, there'll be discussions on, did the committee get it right or not, but it'll be better than Arizona State and Boise State kind of having that, top
But
seed.
I do think it's good having the automatic bid for winning your conference, just
Agreed.
because that still puts, a lot of pressure and emphasis on winning the conference, but it is going to be better now that it's not 1 through 4, just because, you would potentially have a 2 seed that could get smoked in the first round by an 8 seed or something like that. Or just, I know that's not how it's actually seeded, but just making up numbers here. But like we were saying with how they're paying players, this will be the second year of them doing a 12-team playoff. So who knows if it stays this way after this year. It was a trial and error process last year, just because they had a couple bad games in the first few rounds, just because
but I think you're gonna have bad games. I mean, no matter what, like, because no matter what, you're having bad teams play good teams. It's just, I mean, it's hard to get that out just because it's college, and you're leaving it all up to a committee as well. It's not like the NFL where it's a numbers thing, and the best team is in. So it's up to the committee and the eye test, which obviously
that
Nick and I have talked about
something
multiple times.
I was going to say that is something that is yet to have any sway or change or movement in that department, is the whole committee situation. Just because, we've talked about it before, but it's just, it doesn't make sense to me the way
it'd be
they do
really
it.
hard.
I don't know why, but that's just the way it's been for a million years.
You'd have to restructure
whatever
everything, just college football in general, for it to be based on your record and everything, right? But I do think that needs to happen, no matter how hard it is, because it's just kind of ridiculous. Like the committee obviously is biased towards
Yeah.
Bama, Notre Dame, Texas, like these historic schools. Notre Dame, actually made it to the championship this year, but normally they'll get in and get stomped by whoever they're playing, just because they've had a cakewalk of a schedule because they make their own schedule, which is ridiculous. You got to put Notre Dame in a conference. We've talked about that before. There's just changes that need to happen, and we won't get into it, but this is a step in the right direction, I do believe, for the playoff.
Yeah, absolutely needed to happen. We've been talking about it for a while about needing to extend it out 4 teams, just because that was absolutely ridiculous before.
Yeah.
Because realistically, every single year there was 5, 6 teams that really deserved it,
Yeah.
but it's down to this council, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
to pick who the best 4 teams are. But at least now that it's down to 12, it does feel like it's a little bit more of you controlling your own destiny. Because before it was like, oh, we lost 1 game, might as well just go ahead and forfeit the rest of the season,
Yep.
And so now at least there's not as much pressure that's honestly what it was before. If you weren't Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Alabama, any one of those big schools, you lose a game, okay, yeah, your season's over.
Yep.
You're not getting in as a 1-loss, 2-loss team. Yeah, forget it. But now that it's 12 teams, it just puts more. And you're getting more viewership as the NCAA because
it's more money.
You're having more college football playoff games, which is what you want. Y'all are a money-based organization, and so this is clearly a great business move by y'all, and it's something that majority of college football fans have been asking for a while. And so we'll see how this 12-team format pans out. I do think this is going to be a lot better than it was last year. We'll see if any changes need to be made and what happens in the upcoming year. So here's like in our shows and under review, brought to you a quote from the Billy Beane. And he said, "Believe in your vision even when others doubt it."
Amen to that. We thank you for tuning in this week. We'll see you next week with another episode of Under Review.